Rates just dropped for the third straight week. The Federal Reserve held rates steady this Wednesday in what was likely Jerome Powell's last meeting as chair. And sellers who swore they would never give up 3% mortgage rates, well, they're listing anyway. Also, the nation's two biggest home builders just told Wall Street that incentives are going to stay high all year long. And someone inside the very same brokerage as me just stood up at a policy summit in Florida and told a room full of consultants and builders that the housing shortage narrative, the one they keep telling you about, well, it's not actually what the data is saying. I'm going to give it all to you here. The national picture, the Jacksonville reality, and what it means if you're a homeowner, an agent, or an investor trying to figure out your next move. I'm Jim Armstrong. I'm a realtor at Momentum Realty here in Jacksonville, Florida. And this is the Distressed Property Dispatch Situation Report number 2 for May 1st, 2026. Let's get into it. Let's start with a number that affects every single transaction in the market, the mortgage rate. As of this week, the 30-year fixed rate came in at 6.23%, down from 6.3% the week before. The 15-year fixed rate dropped to 5.58%. That's 3 straight weeks of declines according to Freddie Mac data reported by Florida Realtors. Before you get excited and think we're headed back to 4%, let me give you some context. 6 weeks ago, rates briefly dipped below 6% for the first time since late 2022. That was a genuine signal of optimism heading into spring. Then the situation in Iran, oil prices got higher, inflation jitters came back, and the 10-year Treasury yield moved up. Rates followed. We peaked around 6.4% just 2 weeks ago. Now here's what happened on Wednesday that we all need to understand. The Federal Reserve met and held interest rates steady at a target range of 3.5 to 3.75%. That decision was on an 8-4 split, the most dissent on a Fed vote since October of 1992. 4 members of that committee broke from Chair Powell, and that matters because it tells you the Fed itself is divided on where to go from here. This is likely Jerome Powell's last meeting as chair. His term ends mid-May, and Kevin Warsh, the president's nominee, set to replace him, advanced out of the Senate Banking Committee that same morning. Why does it matter to you? Because people who told you the rates will drop in 2026 were betting on the Fed cutting. The Fed didn't cut. The Fed is citing the war in the Middle East, oil prices being up almost 70% year to date, and inflation back to 3.3% annualized, all reasons why they need to wait. Powell said directly that he's not considering cutting rates until the oil shock passes and tariff progress is clear. That's not a near-term timeline. So this pullback to 6.23% on the 30-year mortgage is meaningful, but it's happening in spite of the Fed, not because of it. The Mortgage Bankers Association is projecting rates to stay above 6% for the rest of 2026. Fannie Mae is a little more optimistic. They're calling for rates to drop below 6% by the end of the year. The honest answer? Nobody knows for certain. What we do know is the Fed is not riding to anybody's rescue this summer. What this means locally for Northeast Florida is every time rates tick down, we see more buyer inquiries in Jacksonville. The difference between a 6.46 and a 6.23% on a $300,000 home is roughly $50 a month. Doesn't sound like much, but when it's somebody who's sitting on the fence, sometimes that's the number that makes them pick up the phone. For distressed homeowners, if you're behind on your payments and watching rates, you're watching the wrong numbers. Lower rates matter less than the value of your home and the options available to you right now. Don't wait for that magical rate. The clock on your situation is more important than the rate environment. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. Here's a storyline that's more important than the rate movement this week. Coldwell Banker just released their 2026 home shopping season report. Over 700 active real estate agents were surveyed nationwide from March through early April. The headline? 1 in 3 sellers right now has a mortgage rate below 5%, and they're listing anyway. For the past 3 years, the biggest drag on housing inventory has been the rate lock-in effect. People bought or refinanced at 3% back in 2020 or 2021, and they weren't going to voluntarily trade that 6% mortgage in. But life doesn't stop. The data shows 36% of agents say their sellers are listing because of personal life circumstances, job changes, family needs, divorce, aging, or downsizing. Not because they timed the market, because they had to move. Here's what's important about the regional picture. The South, which includes Florida, is currently leaning into a buyer's market, not a seller's market. The U.S. Northeast and Midwest are tighter, and for Jacksonville, compared to cities like Boston and Chicago right now, we have more inventory relative to demand. That's good news for buyers, and it's pressure on sellers to price competitively. For agents watching this, that shift in seller psychology is a doorway. People who have been locked in for 3 years are starting to move. They need someone who can walk them through the math honestly. And if you can have that conversation without overselling, you're going to win those listings. This week we got earning reports from the two largest home builders in the country, D.R. Horton and Pulte Group. And they tell a different, specific story about where the new construction market is heading. Orders are growing, but profits are shrinking, and both missed earnings per share. Why? Because they're spending enormous amounts on buyer incentives to keep the sales moving. Pulte's incentives as a percentage of home sales revenue hit 10.9% in quarter 1, 2026, up 8% over a year ago. On a $500,000 home, that's over $50,000 in rate buydowns, closing cost assistance, or price cuts. D.R. Horton told investors flat out, incentives are going to stay elevated for the rest of 2026. Their CEO said affordability challenges continue to require generous incentive packages, including mortgage rate buydowns and closing cost contributions. If you're a new buyer, new construction is competing harder for your business than it has in years. That's leverage. If you've been eyeing a new build in St. Johns County, Duval, or Nassau County, now is a good time to sit down with the builder's rep and ask what's on the table. The answer? It's a lot right now. If you're a resale seller, you're in direct competition with those builders. If a builder is offering a 2-to-1 rate buydown and gets a buyer down to a 4.23% effective rate in year 1, your listing better be priced to compete. For investors, Pulte specifically called out strong demand in Florida, with build-to-order homes increasing to 43% of their total orders. That says buyer demand in our market is real. People aren't waiting for rates to drop before they build. There's a shift in buyer psychology that doesn't get enough attention, and it has real implications for what our inventory looks like and how deals get done. A new survey from BMO found that 65% of buyers expect their first home purchase to be their forever home. Rocket Mortgage found that 34% of first-time buyers specifically say their first home is their forever home, not a stepping stone. Only 16% are approaching it as a short-term investment to trade up later, compared to 29% who said that back in 2022. They're not buying small starter homes to flip in 5 years. They're buying a home they expect to stay in for a decade or more. They want more bedrooms, they want to accommodate aging parents, and they want dedicated office space. The average age of a first-time home buyer is now 40. That's not a 26-year-old buying their first condo. That's a 40-year-old who has probably been renting for about the last 15 years, has a family, and has a clearer picture of what they need. For Jacksonville sellers of larger homes, 4 bedrooms or more with the right layout and a decent yard, your product is in demand with this buyer profile. This is not the market to overprice it, but you have a serious buyer pool. Now I need to slow down a little bit and be straight with you, because most people in this industry won't be straight with you on this issue. The 2026 Florida Housing Solutions Summit just took place a couple weeks ago on April 22nd in Tampa, Florida. That summit included builders, consultants, policymakers, and data companies. The overwhelming message was, there's a housing shortage. We need to build more. The demand's there. One of the people pushing back on that narrative at the summit was John Brooks, the CEO and co-founder of Momentum Realty, the brokerage I'm part of here in Jacksonville, Florida. And the data he brought into the room told a very different story. The argument being pushed by the industry, backed by the National Association of Realtors, the White House, major builders, and paid data companies, is that we're short somewhere between 4 to 10 million homes. That narrative exists for specific reasons. It keeps government funds flowing to builders, it keeps the permits moving, and it keeps buyers feeling the urgency that may not actually exist in this market. JP Morgan looked at the same data and came back with completely different numbers. They show a functional shortage of about 1.3 million homes. And that shortage is concentrated in the Northeast, and it's almost entirely the affordable starter home segment. Not in Jacksonville, not in the Sun Belt either. Here's what's actually happening on the ground. We are oversupplied in the mid-range and luxury segment. We have builders who've signed contracts, broke ground, and now have to finish communities that were designed for demand that no longer exists at today's interest rates or today's price points. Net domestic migration is down 93% from its peak in Florida. International immigration is down 70%. And right here in Jacksonville, 1 in 3 listings are taking a price cut every single week. Now, this is not doom and gloom. I'm not here to try and scare anyone. I'm here to tell you what's actually happening so you can make the right decision. Because here's the flip side of everything I just told you. And this is the part nobody else is going to say. If you're a distressed homeowner, the market reality I just described to you is not your enemy, it's your leverage. Think about what a softening market with excessive inventory actually means for your situation. It means buyers have choices. It means overpriced listings are not going to sell. They're going to just sit. It means sellers who are in denial about where the values are heading, and they're going to spend months chasing the market down and reducing price week after week, watching their equity erode further while they wait. A property structured and approved for a short sale cuts through all of that. When a lender approves a short sale, they price it based on the current broker price opinion or a current appraisal. That means the approved price reflects where the market is right now, not where an overly optimistic seller hopes it might be. In a market where a third of listings are cutting prices weekly, an approved short sale is already priced where the market is heading. It's not distressed inventory, it's correctly priced inventory. For a buyer, that's not a problem property. That's the most rational purchase in the entire market. For a lender, a negotiated short sale recovers more than a foreclosure auction, where an investor buys at a deep discount. And for you, the homeowner, it means you exit in a controlled outcome instead of waiting for a process that you had no say in. The longer you wait in this market, the worse the position gets on both sides. The lender gets less flexible as values soften further and the property becomes harder to move. The buyer pool shrinks as inventory builds. Your negotiating leverage, which exists right now, narrows every single week you don't act. You may have been given lemons, but a short sale makes it into lemonade. And in this specific market, at this specific moment, that lemonade is actually better than most of what else is sitting on the shelf right now. I want to speak directly to someone who may be watching this video, not because they want the market data, but because they may be worried about their mortgage. If you're behind on payments, you've gotten letters from your lender, or you've already seen a list pendens filed against your home, you need to hear this. You have more options than you think. And the worst thing you can do right now is nothing. The market data we just covered isn't bad news for you. It's a roadmap. Get in front of this now before the market softens further, before your window narrows, and before you lose the ability to control what happens next. I'm a certified short sale and foreclosure resource, or SFR, certified through National Association of Realtors. I work with a processing team that handles the lender negotiations so you don't have to navigate it alone. If you want to know what your options are, the link in the description below will get you my email. No pressure, no sales pitch, just a conversation. For distressed homeowners, if you're behind on your mortgage and you're watching this from anywhere in Florida, email me at jimarmstrong904@gmail.com. The same goes for anyone out of state. I can refer you to one of my fellow National Association of Realtor, SFR Realtors nationwide. Put short sale in the subject line, and I'll respond personally. The consultation's free. Your options won't wait. For real estate agents, if you want to understand how to handle distressed listings, or you're looking for a realtor in Jacksonville that's actively working this space, reach out. If you have a short sale referral from anywhere in Florida, let's talk about how we can work together. Email's the same, jimarmstrong904@gmail.com. That's your distressed property dispatch, SitRep number 2, May 1st, 2026. Rates are down for the third straight week. The Fed held the line on Wednesday and Powell is on his way out, meaning rate cut hopes just got pushed further down the road this summer. The lock-in effect is cracking. 1 in 3 sellers is letting go of sub 5% rates, and they're listing in. Builders are competing hard, and their incentive packages are real. First-time home buyers are shopping for forever homes, not starter homes. Here in Jacksonville, the data on the ground tells a more honest story than what the industry narrative wants you to believe. There's no housing shortage in the Sun Belt. There's a market mismatch. Prices are being cut on a third of listings every week. And if you're a distressed homeowner, that reality isn't working against you. It's your leverage. Use it now. I'll be back Monday with a deep dive on how to talk to your lender when you're behind on your payments, what to say, what not to say, and what your rights are. If this was useful, share it with someone who needs it. See you Monday.